standing at the western side of Durwood Street, formerly of course Bucks Row, renamed Durwood Street in 1889 following the Ripper murders. That's the board school, which was under threat of demolition in the 90s. It was derelict, entirely revamped, and now exclusive apartments. This is the length of brick wall predating the murders over the extension to the Whitechapel tube line, where some people think the actual murder took place, and of course it didn't. Looking down Durwood Street, modern housing. Essex Wharf used to be standing here. It's where the Perkises lived, who didn't hear anything happening that night. Essex Wharf itself demolished in 1990. The remains here of a pillar from a much later garage that was on the spot of Brown Stable Yard. Location of New Cottage itself was there. The gateway into Brown Stables Yard was here. Car parking spot now, looking entirely innocuous. But the murder spot of Mary Ann Nichols, about 3:30 in the morning on the 31st of August 1888, is just there, completely blank and plain. Okay, we're now inside the rather noisy area of what was the old brewery just off Hanbury Street. So this is what the tourists never actually get to see as a rule, because they're all standing out inside the middle of the road. What we've actually got here is this would have been, we're standing inside 29 Hanbury Street. And a little bit of guesswork, Annie Chapman's murder spot is presumably about here. It's about there, which is something that people don't know. So I'm only going about the length of the building. It's about what we'd assume. Just there is where Annie Chapman was killed by Jack the Ripper in the early morning of the 8th of September 1888. Now on Henrique Street, formerly known as Berner Street, the red building you see in the distance at the top of the street on the right hand side was at the time of the Ripper murders Harris's tobacco shop. This is now the Harry Gosling School, but we'd know it better as the location down Berner Street of Dutfield Yard. The side of the street demolished in 1909. The site of the gateway where Liz Stride was murdered is pretty much where you see half of a drain pipe sticking up from the ground, over to where you see the wooden board there, being 12 feet wide, 2 gates of 6 feet across. The body found just inside the gateway, with the feet just about touching the gate, so 6 feet in is where the feet was, on the right hand side. Alright, I did a clip here a few years back, but there was no narration on it, so I'm going to do one now. We're in Mitre Square. As all Ripper historians and non-historians of the case should know, Mitre Square is the location of the murder of Catherine Eddowes between 1:30 and 1:44 AM on the 30th of September 1888, half an hour to 3/4 of an hour after the murder of Liz Stride in Dutfield Yard in Berner Street. I'll point out some of the things to you. Over there is Mitre Street with more modern buildings. There was one street lamp over in Mitre Street. Here was the back of a picture framing shop owned by Mr. Taylor. Here was the back of an empty house. There was a warehouse running up this side. This is now the playground, more modern, 1900s, of the Sir John Cass Foundation School. The alley at the end. This is St James's Passage today. At the time of the murders it was called Church Passage, and it was little more than 1 metre wide from where the modern wall is up to just past the first bollard. There was another street light hanging off the side of the building there. Along here were the offices of Kearley and Tong. Over in that far corner was where their night watchman George Morris would be at night time, the only man awake in Mitre Square at night. The alleyway is there now as it was then. Again, changed names. It's now St James's Passage, and it was at the time. Oh, I've forgotten. Doesn't matter. I should know these things. I do know them. I just can't be bothered to say them right now. And over there is where number 3 used to be. The family of P.C. Richard Pierce lived there, and there was an empty house there. And there was another warehouse jutting out of that far corner. The steps into the ground here, some tour guides will tell you, are the same ones that were extant at the time of the murders, but they probably aren't because they're not laid in the same direction. The murder spot of Lestrade, although people tell you all sorts of places, is actually just about here. It's near the edge of the pavement, in the gap between where the flower bed is and the modern wall. Some tour guides will tell you the middle of the flower bed, which is right in the middle of the houses. Some tour guides will tell you out in the middle of the square. But we know the plans of Frederick Foster, the plans that were found in the mid-60s in the cellar of the Royal London Hospital, that this is actually where the body was lying. Okay, YouTubers, a slightly different angle, actually inside White's Road car park, looking out towards Commercial Street. The Britannia pub, also known as Ringers, is at the end here. Obviously you have to remember that Dorset Street is not quite in the same position as this road. It was on a slightly different angle, slightly further to the south, and a lot narrower than this particular one. So looking down, this is where 26 Dorset Street was. It was largely used as a storeroom for the shop of 27 by John McCarthy. Where the car is there was 27 Dorset Street, McCarthy's shop. The alleyway itself, leading down to Miller's Court, let me use my finger, the finger of Phillip, there we are. The alleyway started about there, and it went straight through the buildings, about the width of my finger as well. It's a very narrow alleyway, and it merged out into the courtyard at the end, Miller's Court at the end down there. Mary Kelly's room, number 13 Miller's Court, was from about where you see the shopping trolley, leading into where the current London Fruit Exchange from 1929 stands, up to about where the bags of rice are, and almost up to where you see the fire escape down there. It's looking down what was Dorset Street, now an unknown private service road. You can see at the end is the Providence Row Convent and Night Shelter, built in 1860. And that man knows something evil.